So when I arrived at the airport in Calcutta, this Mercedes came to receive me to take me to my headquarters in Eastern Command. So I asked the driver, I said, this vehicle is not moving too well. There's sort of all sorts of pulls and pushes going on in the engine. It's supposed to be Mercedes. What's the problem? He said, sir, it's an old, useless car, which, which the army commander likes, has been sent to you to bring you home. So I said, what's the problem with it? He said, the engine is old. It's a 71 model, and I took over Eastern Army in 1987. And so it's had its life. That's fine. We'll do something about it. There was another issue. I was very respectful and fond of Field Marshal Sam Mannix-Shaw because he had been the commandant in the Staff College when I was a student. And we were very, very impressed with him. Then we were very impressed with the fact that when the army ran away after the 1962 war, Sam Mannix-Shaw, who was to be retired after court-martial by, I've told you all about this, about Defense Minister Krishna Menon. Krishna Menon was sacked, and Jawaharlal Nehru died an unsavory death after 2 more years, having been hoodwinked by the Chinese. And two people who had been written off by the government, General Jain Chaudhary became the army chief, and Sam Mannix-Shaw became the 4-Corps commander to restore the confidence of the army in the Northeast, which he did. So I was very fond of him. And he later became the army chief and did extremely well in the 1971. So I had been inviting him. I had invited him to the College of Combat when I was the commandant there. And he very generous of him to have come, and he spoke for hours and hours and hours to our students and the whole station, signal school and the infantry school, everybody gathered to hear Sam speak. And he speak for about 4 hours standing up. So now when I was Eastern Army Commander, I sent him a message in Wellington in South India, living near our staff college, to say that because he does come, he was on the board of a large number of corporate sector industries and others. And I knew he was coming to Calcutta to the Grand Hotel or whatever. And he was on a board meeting with one of his institutions. So he's coming to Calcutta. So I sent a message to Sam through the commandant of staff college to say that why don't you come and have a drink with us in your old home? That's the Eastern Army Commander's house. So we had a very good house, which Sam had taken over from, I think, either India Tobacco Company or somebody. It was next, it was on the other side of the Calcutta Zoo. It's a very nice property. So Sam sent a message, I'll only come to visit you if you send us the shear line. So I'd sent, we started wondering what meanwhile he landed at the Calcutta airport. So I'd sent my one of my military assistants, a Lieutenant Colonel from one of my regiments, 87 Armored Regiment, Billu City, to receive him. So this Major Sethi, when he received the Field Marshal at the Calcutta airport, and he said that the Army Commander wants to remind you, sir, that come and have a drink with him. You're here for 3 days or whatever day you pick. So he said, if you send me the shell line to fetch me, I'll come. So when Billu Sethi came back and told me about this, I said, what the hell is the shell line? He said, I don't know. I didn't have the guts to ask the Field Marshal, what do you mean by the shell line? So I said, must be some sort of a car. Yeah. Because he says, unless you send me that, I won't come. So we asked, my head of the EME was a major, what's the shear line? He said, I don't know. We'll have to examine. I should better be fast because he's coming in 2 days. Third day he was coming to decide to come if we send him a shear line. So we didn't know what it was, but he did realize after examination that the share line was a car. It is known as the Austin share line. It's a 1948 model. And the story of this car, since we came to know that it's supposed to be a car, then I examined its history. He said it was a new thing that came out in UK by Austin Motor Company called the Austin Shell. It looks like a Rolls Royce. It's a silver color with huge headlights in front and very large back, beautifully designed. So silver colored thing. And it was imported to India by General Roy Boucher, the second army chief after our independence. In 1947, I've explained this to you, I think. 1947, there was a chap called Rob Lockhart, who was the army chief. And he didn't last more than 8 or 9 months because when the Pakistanis went into Kashmir, uh, the Pakistani army chief, also a Britisher, General Gracie, if I recollect, had informed the overall Supreme Court commander, that's Field Marshal Lord Auchinleck, not him, but he rang up Lockhart, Rob Lockhart, the Indian Army chief, that the Pakistanis are getting ready to get into Kashmir. He said that 2 weeks before that attack in Kashmir by the so-called Razakars and tribals led by Pakistani officers and Jeshos and sergeants. But Rob Lockhart never informed the Indian government, Sardar Patel. So when this went on, when the attack took place, Sardar Patel raised the question to Auchinleck, who is the Supreme Commander, British officer, why were we not informed earlier? Since you have got a British officer commanding the Pakistan Army, why has he not informed us? Please find out so that we can take disciplinary action against him. When they checked up with General Tracy, he said, but I rang up Rob Lockhart and told him a few weeks back. So when Rob Lockhart was questioned, he says, well, I didn't think it was important enough to be told to the government of India. There are more reasons behind this. We can discuss this separate question at length. I don't think the British Chiefs of Staff Committee wanted India to get Kashmir anyway, so they were supporting the attack by Pakistan and they didn't want to inform the Indian government. Anyway, so Rob Lockhart was sacked on the spot by Sardar Patel. After he was sacked, Roy Boucher took over as the army chief. That was in 1948. And in 48, he wanted a better staff car because only the old World War II staff cars were there. So he got government sanction and he imported this car from Austin in UK, the latest model, which is the Austin Shellac. Now, when he used that, later when General Cariappa later Field Marshal Cariappa became the army chief, he was using this car. And I had seen it when I was a second lieutenant and General Cariappa came to visit us on the Amritsar front. A beautiful looking car, and even I had an eye for it. So obviously Sam Mannixhaw had an eye for that. And when he was Eastern Army Commander, he was using this Austin shell line as his stuff. And so I asked them to find it. It must be in one of the garages or the underground garages in Calcutta, in the Fort William. So they couldn't find it anyway. I came early in the morning, next morning, and we drove around the whole Calcutta. We said every storeroom and every garage will be opened wide so we can have a look at it. And sure enough, we saw this dusty backside of the car, absolutely horrible state. The paint had gone for a six, is sitting on its rims because the tires had gone, everything had gone, and nobody bothered to notice it. I said, have a look at that. So we opened it and we cleaned it up, and sure enough, that was the Austin shell. Now, Sam had commanded Eastern Army before he became the army chief. And he became the army chief, I think, in 1969 or thereabout. So since that time, in 1970, this Austin shell was lying as a dump because the next army commander didn't want to use it. So it's a 1948 model, and now the year of our Lord was 1987. So anyway, we got hold of this car, and I told the head of the army to clean it and get it ready. So we got this done. Put new tubes and new tires and all that sort of thing. And I came down that evening to see it, and there was an artillery driver. He had put there, and I asked the driver, "What do you think of this car?" He said, "Saab, ye to chakra hai. You know, this is a useless." So I said, "Sack this man straight away." I rang up the armored regiment. There was a tank regiment that we had in North Bengal. I rang them up. I said, "You have a good driver who can drive staff cars?" He said, "Yes, sir, we have." So I said, "I'm sending a helicopter, send him here." I sent a helicopter to North Bengal and got hold of this driver and came here and said, "Come on, you get this. You have to drive the ex-chief of army staff and Field Marshal Manekshaw. So please get it sorted out." So all right, got him there. Then because we were not sure whether the engine would function or not, I mean, we got it going. We had another 2-3 cars behind it, and this went to Oberoi's hotel where I was staying. And then my staff officer went up to Sam. He was sitting in the basement of the hotel where you have these, what do you call them? Loud music and the young people dancing away and all that sort of thing. So he said, "I'm enjoying this with my whiskey. If you've got the share line, I'll go, otherwise I won't." My staff said, "The share line is standing outside." He said, "Oh, all right." He came out, very happy to see the share line there. He sat at the back, put a cigar in his mouth, and he arrived in my house. Rupi and I were waiting at the porch. And the Calcutta house, you enter from one side, you go around the whole garden, and then you come to the porch. He did. And we received Sam and gave him a drink and had a very nice conversation about everything. The command of the Eastern Army, the command of the army, the 71 war, the works. Delightful to talk to him. So I started getting the share line worked out. We wrote to Austin and in London, to say, "Come on, this is the Austin share line and this is its history. It is imported by an army chief and used by General Karyappa when he was the army chief, later field marshal. And now Sam Manekshaw loves this car when he was Eastern Army commander. We are getting it going, so give us a new engine." They were very good, very kind. They said, "All right." They had in Calcutta a number of motor car workshops and institutions, and many of them were dealing with foreign cars which were being imported by Nepal. So they sent an engine to them and then sent us word that please go to such and such workshop, we'll fit a new engine for you. So we fitted the new engine there, this car became excellent. And I must tell you, that whenever the Republic Day parade or something takes place in Calcutta, the army commander used to come in the share line and all the people of Calcutta used to clap. And also for the old car rally that the statesman used to run. Old car rally, this didn't conform because the old car rally is before 1939, when technology was a bit poorer. After 1939, and this is a 1948 model, so it didn't come for the old car rally, but for all public affairs, I used to drive in this car with Rupi and get a big clap from the public. That is the Austin share line. And when I left Eastern Command, the next Eastern Army Commander, Gugi Bora from my regiment, said, "Please look after the car." He made it even better. So that's the story of the Austin share line. Then there was a story of the Niazi's Mercedes-Benz, which I mentioned earlier. Since the engine was not good, I wrote to our military attaché in Bonn, in West Germany. At that time, Germany was divided into two parts, East Germany and West Germany. The headquarters of West Germany was in Bonn. And we had an armored corps officer as a military attaché there. So I sent a message to him. "Would you please request Mercedes-Benz to give us an engine for this 1971 model?" And why? Because it is a war trophy, which has been captured from the 1971 war, and now the army commander wants to use it as a stuff. So Mercedes is very thrilled because it's a very good advertisement for them. So they looked around the whole of Germany. They said, "This model is out of production, but we have found 3 engines, old engines. 2 of them are not good. One we've got going very nicely. It's a good engine. You can have it free, just lying there with us. But for transportation of this engine, you'll have to work it out how best you can do it." So we asked our military advisor. He found out where this engine was lying. And then we approached the Indian Air Force. because once in 2 3 months, huge aircraft goes from Indian Air Force to Germany, West Germany in those days for purchase of various stores and military stuff and all that, whichever the government has ordered. And one of our planes brings it back. So we asked the Air Force to be kind enough. There was the Eastern Air Command officer when I was in Calcutta was a chap called Air Marshal Chadda, became a very good friend of mine. He worked it out with the air chief that, come on, this next plane that goes there, uh, when it lands in Bonn, it should bring back an engine for Eastern Army. So we arranged locally by transport and all that to move this engine from wherever it was to the airport in Bonn. And when this Indian Air Force aircraft landed there, this was loaded and it arrived in Delhi. And then the Air Force made sure that a special flight was arranged to send it to Calcutta, where we collected it. And Mercedes workshops in Calcutta fitted it inside Niazi's old car and became a very good car. We gave it a paint job and all that sort of thing. So this is the story of the two cars that happened. And Sam told me later about this Sherlock. He said when he visited, uh, he was in staff college as the commandant, as a major general. 62, after the 1964, he became an army commander. But he first came, he went to 4 Corps. From 4 Corps, 1970, became an army commander in Western Command for a few months, 4 or 5 months. Then he went to Eastern Corps. But when he was an army commander in Western Command, he knew that this shear line was in the garages at army headquarters because he had taken a shine to this when Roy Boucher had got it from UK. And at that time, he was the brigadier, the military operations director. He got assigned to this car. So when he went there, he met General J. N. Chaudhary, who became the army chief, and said, look, this shear line is lying there. You're not using it. Do you have any use for it? So Chaudhary said, no, I've got some better cars there. He said, all right, if you don't mind, I'll take this car. So he brought this car. He got it imported to Shimla, Western Command. He was there for a few months. And he used to drive around in Shimla in this shear line. Then when he went to Eastern Army, he carried this car from Western Command to Eastern Command. And he was using it as a staff car in Calcutta. And then when he got posted as the Army Chief, I think that was in 1969, that was in, he became the Army Chief. For the 71 war, he was the Army Chief. So when he came to Army headquarters in 1970 or thereabout, he left this Austrian shear line in Calcutta because he said, I won't bring it anymore. Eastern Army Commander can use it. That's the story of the shear line. So the shear line is very much used. I don't know if it's still being used, but this is how we got these two cars renovated. And I must tell you that industries all over the world, when you have something like this, they go out of the way to help you because it's an advertisement for their particular company. It's the story of the two cars. And now, when I had done the National Defense College, I had made friends with the Navy officer called Subhash Chopra. He was a rear admiral at that time. Sorry, he was a commodore of the Navy at that time. I was a brigadier. Shrupi and I got quite fond of him and his wife. And as luck would have it, later, after the National Defense College, I had gone somewhere else as a brigadier. Then I got promoted to Major General. I went to Sikkim to command the division there. And I got a call from the Sikkim railway station from Subhash Chopra's wife to say that I'm here. My daughter's in St. Paul's in Darjeeling. So can you help with some transport for me? So I sent a car for her with a officer. And we took her to Darjeeling, picked up her daughter. And I said, the condition is for this guy that you come and spend 3 days with us, Srupi and me, in Ganga, which she did. We found that she had been separated from Admiral Chopra. So she's a good-looking woman, but she was very, severely turned out, hair straight back, and spectacles on, and all that. No makeup. So I told her, you're a good-looking person. Why don't you open your hair and take off these spectacles, use contact lenses? She says, what for? I said, no, you've got to look good. Because if you look good, you'll feel good. If you don't look good, you're not feeling good. So with Rupi's assistance, we got her done up. And yes, she looked very good. And then we said that Subhash Chopra is a good chap. They had some problem, married people have problems. I said, now you go back and you make eyes at this chap and let's see who can get together. And I contacted Subhash also, got him and his wife together. So now when I became Eastern Army Commander, he was the Eastern Naval uh, Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief in Vizag, Visakhapatnam. So he rang me up from there. He said, look here, her name is Biba. He said, Biba and I want both of you to come and spend some time with us. So if you come here, I want you to officially talk to all my naval officers and ratings about what the hell are you doing in the Northeast? I mean, what's the problem there and what are you doing? Because we are sea people. We only see the level sea. We don't know what a mountain looks like. So on the condition that you allow some of my officers and ratings to go to the northern border and see what is the army about this, what's going on here. So I said, okay, we arranged for his about 30 or 40 of his naval ratings and many of his officers to visit Sikkim, which is the Nathula area, so they could see what the Chinese look like and what a mountain looks like. We also met some of them visit Tawang, so they could go up to Bumla Pass and see what Tibet looks like and what the high mountain ranges of Himalayas look like and what are we doing over there. Meanwhile, Surupi and I went to Vizag. And I told Subhash that, look, I'll come there and I'll talk to your people, but there are a few conditions attached to this. He said, what are those? I said, I want to examine the Chakra. The Chakra is the nuclear submarine that had been hired on lease from the Soviets to train our Navy crews on how to manage a nuclear submarine. The idea there was that eventually we will produce nuclear submarine. The problem with the nuclear submarine is to make a smaller nuclear engine which can fit inside. See? So that technology has to be done. But meanwhile, how to operate that sort of boat? Now, the Soviets sent us this submarine. It's a very large submarine. And they did not send any weapons with it. It can fire about six nuclear missiles or something it has on it. So it had no weapons. But how to manage the submarine, how to run it, and how to look after it, how to maintain it, all this. So I wanted to have a look at it. He said, that's top secret, but since you requested, I'll make special arrangements for you. He said, the second requirement for me is that I want to go in a submarine for a sortie. I want to look through the periscope and put my crosshairs on some target and press some button somewhere. Whether a torpedo goes or not, World War I movies. Yeah, all right, we don't do that sort of thing now, but anyway, I'll take you in a second. I said, third thing is I want to visit Andaman and Nicobar, which is under the Navy. With Rup. It's all right, we did it. So we visited Vizag, spoke to the men for about 2 hours, took their questions and answers about what the hell the army is doing in the Northeast. What are the problems with the Chinese border? I said they were reasonably quiet in those days, but they'll develop in due course of time, depending on the change of leadership in China and also their development they were doing at the moment. And when they do get developed and their muscles become strong, they will push around it. Then we investigated the chakra. It's a delight to go around that submarine. All the commands are in Russian. They're written on the various controls as to what action you have to take. So all our crews have been trained in Russian. Then they put me into a Kilo class submarine, which is again a Russian submarine, and took me for a sortie in the Bay of Bengal. Now I must tell you that I've been to the Arabian Sea for swimming in Goa and in Balasore and all that, which is north of Bombay. The Arabian Sea is very dirty. It's full of oil. What happens is there's a lot of ships which are carrying crude oil from the Gulf through the Arabian Sea, south of Sri Lanka, through the Straits of Malacca or wherever in Southeast Asia, to China, to Japan, to guzzle oil in large quantity. Every kilometer of Indian Ocean has got an oil tank from the Gulf to China and to Japan. What happens is that you change the engine oil. Now, if you to change engine oil of a ship, you're required to go to port, hire a tug to empty your engine oil, for which you have to pay. And then you get fresh oil, which you fill in your engines. But what these sea captains do is, in order to save money, they, just before reaching Bombay, they dump the engine oil into the Arabian Sea. Then they don't have to pay for a tug and for removal of the old oil. And they fill up with new oil. As a result, the Arabian Sea is very dirty and very oily. But you go to the Bay of Bengal, to Vizag or anywhere else. Now, when the Brahmaputra comes down, it's a mighty river with a lot of silt. And this comes down for almost 300 kilometers south of the delta, the Hooghly and the various deltas of the Padma and Brahmaputra come down from south of Bangladesh. And after that 300 kilometers, Vizag is further south. It's a crystal blue ocean, absolutely spotlessly clean, no dirt in it. So when, just one second. So when you go into the submarine, they have a very nice lunch laid on. 7-course meal with the best of cooks. The Navy always has the best cooks of the military. Then they, from a valve, they give a wine glass full of seawater. It's crystal clear. They say that we have to toast with salt water, this from the sea, to make you a mariner before you can have the meal. I said, fine. So they gave me this. I took one sip, it's full of salt. It's like 100% salt, though it's crystal clear. So they said, all right, General, you take one sip, that's enough. You can't put it down because it will set you off. Then you have the meal. So we did this sorting. And I said, I want to see the periscope and all that. I did that. They said, but we don't use this periscope for that anymore. Now it's all radar. You can pick up a target on the radar and you can aim with the radar and you can set off your torpedoes. Those World War II things have gone. Why I am particularly saying this to you, that even in the Kilo class submarines, all the orders are in Russian. So the crews are speaking in Russian and giving orders in Russian. The result of this was I explained to you the 71 war against East Pakistan. And the American President Nixon had sent the 7th Fleet to sort of chastise us, so-called assisting Americans to vacate East Bengal. And they got very frightened because they thought that the Russians had many submarines and things and ships there because all our people speak in Russian. They had the electronics to pick up your conversations. And they got quite afraid. Of course, the Soviets also sent a nuclear submarine behind them. It's got the wind up. And the Americans laid off. But it just shows you what happens, how little things affect a conflict. So then we went to Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and the Navy has its own island there. So after we landed by air on Port Blair Airport, then we took a helicopter and we were taken to an island where we spent the whole day snorkeling and swimming and seeing what's under the sea. A delightful visit to the Navy. I must tell you also that we had a very good friendship with the Air Force. Now, the Air Force headquarters was in Shillong. So I had to visit Shillong because I had the Assam Rifles there, which is under my command, commanded by a Lieutenant General. And Air Marshal Chadda was the boss, and we got on net over there because he has his air headquarters. There's a lot of coordination necessary for any conflict between air and the army as far as our land borders are concerned, and between the air, army, and navy in case sea borders are concerned. So this coordination necessary by personal equation between the top people right from the chief down. Of course, now the chief of defense staff is thinking of getting better organizations where you have theater commanders. And we see where that goes. But the idea here is that there must be much more coordination between the three services. I must tell you about one thing I had to do as an Eastern Army commander. There was a huge court of inquiry going on, and they asked me to review that court of inquiry. That was court of inquiry was on the tea trade. Now, the tea trade, large amount of tea of very high quality is purchased in Calcutta tea market, which is the largest in the country. With the whole of Assam tea gardens, etc., are mostly owned by people who are living in Calcutta. And they bring the tea there to sell it to the military because the military spends a lot of money on this, so that our Jawans and others get tea. There's a lot of corruption, I would call it, in anything where the military deals with civilian organizations. I suppose, I don't know why that should be, but there it is. People are ready to pay you a lot under the table if you select their brand of tea. See, because they make a lot of profit if the military takes the tea. So we found that those officers who were dealing with the tea trade, mostly from the army service, because you buy from the market and then give it to military units. The tea is of high quality for which you pay. And many times a slightly lower quality comes in because there are large varieties of tea. I don't know if I explained to you when I was commanding the Mizoram Brigade, where we went for a shoot in one of the tea gardens in Masanpur, between the Masanpur and the Mizo Hills. And after we had laid on a very good lunch for the tea estate owner in whose place we were doing this shoot against the Jungli Murga, the pheasant, he invited us for tea, and he had about 20 sets of tea laid on. On the right were the aromatic, very high quality teas, which have no color in them. And on the left were the basically made from tea dust, where the thick brew could be made with a lot of tannin inside it. And I asked the chef, where do I go for this? He said, your military, go to the left side. That throwaway tannin stuff full of tea powders is the one that you people like because it gives you a lot of thick. You need a lot of tannin in the army, especially when you're in high altitude. So now, if those lower brands of tea are brought in, those people get a lot of money under the table. So this court of inquiry took place, and we had to court-martial a few officers and things. I just wanted to say that Indians are supposed to be very corrupt. In the military, we try our best to not give them the opportunity to be corrupt. But those areas where they're in contact of purchases from the civil market, I'm sorry, corruption takes place automatically. The huge offers made, which are glad to see. And so we do, if we catch somebody, take very severe action, court martials and things like that. But anyway, people take the risk because they get a lot of money. Now I must tell you about another incident. We went to a place called Dinjan, which is in northeast, south of the Brahmaputra, where there were tea gardens, etc. And then I took a flight by helicopter to a place called Elong, which is north of the Brahmaputra. It's on the Siang River. The Siang River really comes from the Brahmaputra, or the Sangpo, as the Chinese call it, rises in Tibet, in the center of Tibet, it becomes eastwards, goes through a large number of canyons, and there are a lot of streams coming from there down across the great mountains into India, which form part of the rivers of the Brahmaputra. The Siang River is supposed to be the main tributary. So we really say that the extension of the Xiangqiu is the Xiang River. And this is militarily very important because a lot of trails come in from the northern borders across the Masbon line into what is now Arunachal Pradesh. So we have defenses over there and we have brigades, etc. So I visited the brigadier in Elong, and after 2 days visit and seeing his brigade, I said, that's fine. He told me that if you have a couple of hours vacant, I'd like to show you one of the schools. I said, fine. So we went to school. Their school was run by the Ramakrishna Mission. I've seen schools in the Northeast run by the Christian missionaries. Now, what the Christian missionaries run is to convert everybody in the school into Christians. You see? There's a lot of hoo-ha about that now, and we don't like that. Though in our constitution, I must tell you that Islam and Christianity are allowed to propagate the religion. But I think in the present day, everybody's taking a rather dim view of this. We don't like people being converted. They mostly take people who are poverty-stricken or something, promise them the earth so that they don't have a caste system, see, and become a Christian or become a Muslim. But now, because your backward castes and your tribal castes are given a lot of assistance for education and jobs all over the country, many of the Christians and Muslims who were ex-low caste are wanting the same facilities, which I think is not being permitted so far. They've taken the case up to Supreme Court. We see where that goes. But once you've converted to Christianity or converted to Islam, then there's no business of a caste system. But they want the mullah. You see, you get advantages for education and you get handouts from the enemy. So they like to be a low caste or a backward caste. Anyway, so Christian missions in Nagaland and Mizoram is entirely Christian. Nagaland is also 60% Christian. And some of the villages there that you visit, you see the padris and all that are wanting to convert everybody to Christianity. So there's a lot of action against some of these conversions. The schools are good. They promise that they look after you equally and they remove your caste system. They do that, but in the end, they don't get any jobs or anything. It's just a baradari, you understand, an association that they get, but they don't get any job because there are no. Anyway, he took me to the Ramakrishna Mission School, and I was very impressed with this, and I wanted to share it with you. In the school prayer, the principal invited us to attend the prayers in the evening. They had 4 walls in the prayer room. Each wall was of a different religion. The Islamic wall was facing towards Mecca, to the west. There's a Christian wall with the sign of the Lord Jesus and so on. There was a Buddhist wall with the Buddha's image there, and there was the Hindu wall. So all the students were taught, whoever were Christians for the prayers were facing the Christian wall, and so on with the Muslim students and the Buddhist students, and the majority of students were Buddhists there, and the Hindus. So that all religions were equally not only taught, but respected. And the students were encouraged to be in their religion and not to, because it's a faith. And if you believe in faith or believe in God or something, when things go wrong, at least you have somebody to pray to give you assistance. So I would say, for those who are not very well developed in education and not very well developed in their mental attitude to these things, a faith or whatever it is a good crutch to lean on when things go wrong. And if your mind gets happy by accepting the faith and accepting what happens to you, well, maybe you lead a more peaceful and happy life than otherwise. It's just like a baby. When something goes wrong, and scream for the mother or scream for the father, and that's the faith he has in his parents to look after it. So exactly the same. So I was very impressed with the Ramakrishna Mission and the head principal, who himself was of the